First, I'd like us to take a look at a set of brass drawer pulls. Now, if a keyhole is present, these are known as escutcheons. Escutcheons are simply protective pieces surrounding a keyhole on a piece of furniture. However, these brass drawer pulls have no keyhole present, so they're simply known as brass drawer pulls. Now, looking at these invite me to ask a few questions. Now let's just dive in. What is brass? Well, brass is an alloy of copper and zinc. Brass can be cast onto solid objects, but more usually it's into sheets that can be cut into flat shapes. Think hinges and escutcheons and our friendly brass drawer pulls. Now, usually our brass drawer pulls had something that was called a bale handle or some type of handle. Those were usually cast. Now, innovations in technology for brass led to many brass drawer pulls, bale handles, and escutcheons to be manufactured more efficiently. But the other question is, where did Americans get brass in the 18th century? And you're probably asking, how does she even know these were made in the 18th century? We'll get there in a minute. But Americans got brass. So from the early to the mid 18th century, the American colonies imported large quantities of brass objects from Europe, particularly the Netherlands and Britain. Some brass foundries were located in the colonies. However, due to the relationship with Britain and restrictions imposed upon the colonies, all raw materials were ordered to be sent to England for manufacture, and then finished goods were then sent back to the colonies. Although it does seem, with some research that I've done, that some individuals seem to have ignored those restrictions put on by the British. And as many newspaper advertisements from the 18th century indicate, brass founders selling a variety of finished products, including furniture for desks and chest of drawers, which leads me to believe that they were selling brass handles on furniture. So it does seem that these brass drawer pulls indicate the ever tumultuous economic relationship between the colonies and Britain. So as you can see, I've put on my gloves to handle this object. Now, I really want us to take a look at this object right now. And you're probably asking, what was the specific date these were made? Well, these pulls are very representative of the 18th century furniture style known as Chippendale. This style was popular between about 1760 and 1785. It has these characteristics of cabriole legs, mahogany, ball and claw feet, rich veneers, elaborate carving, pierced backsplats on chairs, sumptuous curves. And you also see these types of brasses right here. And occasionally they were solid like this one, and sometimes they were also pierced to add even more of an effect. Now, METC's brass drawer pulls aren't as elaborate as some of the other drawer pulls, yet we can still deduce that these were made in the 18th century based on stylistic tendencies. For example, my brass drawer pull that I have right here looks very similar to number 502, shown in a sheet from an 18th century catalog of furniture brasses. Here in this catalog, you can see how the bale handle was attached to the brass pull, and you can see how our brass pull looks very similar to the one from this catalog. And let's take a look at this object again. You can see these holes here. That is where the bale handle would attach to this object. Now you're probably asking, what type of object did these go on? Well, earlier I mentioned something about furniture. And if you were guessing, these do go on furniture. So first, let's take a look at a chest of drawers from historic New England. Now you can see how these brasses were placed on this chest, and there are several brasses and they look beautiful against that rich mahogany. And then next, let's take a look at this high chest of drawers from the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Now, look at how beautiful this high chest is. Look at those carving, and look at how those brasses just really make a statement against that wood and on that piece. Now let's come back and say how we're just sitting here discussing how there's the carving and everything, but when we were looking at the high chest of drawers and we were looking at the other chest of drawers from historic New England, you really see how these brasses make a statement on these pieces. Now, let's also say what craftsmen had to work together, because you're thinking there's wood on this object and there's also brass. So there are multiple craftsmen working together, or the furniture maker had to go speak with someone and go get these brasses from somebody else. And also you're probably asking, who could purchase an object like this? What was their social status? Well, depending on the type of wood used, think mahogany, or even if they were using cherry or pine or something like that. Think about all these different woods that we have. Mahogany is a very expensive wood, and that was very popular during this time period. So depending on that, depending on any extra added additions of carving, who was the maker, where were they living? Was it Philadelphia? Was it New York? Was it Boston? Was it Newport, Providence, etc.? But I want you to kind of take a moment and think about all these things we've asked about this one object. And can you imagine the craftsman working with someone? Can you think of any other questions you can ask about this object?